When experienced climber Jake Morrison spotted something metallic glinting from the top of a 200-foot stone arch, he thought it was trash left by careless tourists. He had no idea he was looking at evidence from one of Utah's most baffling disappearances, or that what he'd find inside would challenge everything investigators thought they knew. What Jake couldn't have known as he rappelled down with the camera was that its metadata would reveal something that made no sense at all. The final photo had been taken 3 days after Victoria and Nathan were officially declared missing. Victoria Chen was the kind of mother who never missed a moment. Her Instagram was filled with perfectly captured memories. Nathan's gap-toothed grin at baseball games, family picnics in Golden Gate Park, sunset hikes along the California coast. Photography wasn't just her profession. It was how she preserved every precious second with her 10-year-old son. "Mom, are we really going to see those giant red rocks?" Nathan had asked during their drive through the Utah desert in September 2016. "Not just see them, buddy. We're going to photograph them," Victoria had replied, adjusting her rearview mirror to catch his excited expression. "Some of the most famous arches in the world are out there." This was meant to be their special bonding trip, just Victoria and Nathan, celebrating his excellent grades and her recent promotion to senior photographer at a San Francisco travel magazine. She'd planned everything meticulously. 3 days of camping in Arches National Park, sunrise shoots at Delicate Arch, and plenty of quality time away from the distractions of city life. They'd arrived at the Devil's Garden campground on a Thursday afternoon. Fellow campers later remembered seeing them. Victoria with her professional camera equipment, Nathan with his Junior Explorer backpack, both wearing matching orange hiking vests. They seemed happy, excited, perfectly ordinary. "We're going to get the shot that makes everyone want to come here," Victoria had told the campground host while registering. She'd even shown him some of her previous work on her camera's LCD screen, stunning landscape photography that captured not just places, but emotions. Friday morning came with perfect weather. Clear skies, ideal lighting, minimal wind. Victoria and Nathan left their campsite early, around 6 a.m., planning to photograph sunrise at several locations before returning for breakfast. Other early hikers recalled seeing them on the Delicate Arch Trail, Victoria patiently teaching Nathan how to frame shots with the massive stone formation. She was showing him how to hold the camera steady, remembered fellow photographer Marcus Webb, who'd chatted with them briefly. The kid was so proud, carrying that little camera she'd bought him. They were having such a great time together. That was the last confirmed sighting. When Victoria and Nathan failed to return to their campsite by noon, other campers began to worry. Victoria's rental car sat untouched, their tent still zipped shut, breakfast supplies laid out as if they'd planned to return any minute. The search began immediately. Park rangers, search and rescue teams, and volunteer groups combed every trail, every arch, every hidden canyon in the area. They found Nathan's Junior Explorer badge near the Courthouse Towers Trail, more than 2 miles from where they'd last been seen. They discovered one of Victoria's lens caps caught in a crevice near the windows section, but they never found Victoria, Nathan, or Victoria's professional DSLR camera. Days turned into weeks. The search expanded across thousands of acres. Helicopters scoured the desert landscape. K-9 units followed every possible scent trail, and experienced climbers rappelled into seemingly inaccessible areas. The FBI joined the investigation, considering everything from abduction to accidental falls into hidden caves. Victoria's ex-husband flew in from Los Angeles, desperate for answers about his son. Her parents arrived from Taiwan, barely speaking English but understanding the universal language of parental grief. The media attention was intense. A successful photographer and her young son vanishing in one of America's most photographed national parks. It's like they just evaporated, Lead investigator Detective Sarah Mills told reporters after 3 weeks of searching. "We've covered every possible area they could have reached. This is one of the most puzzling cases I've encountered." The case officially went cold after 6 months, though it never truly died. Every few years, new search teams would revisit the area with improved technology. In 2019, drone operators spent weeks surveying remote canyons. In 2021, ground-penetrating radar was used near the suspected areas. Nothing. Online forums dedicated to missing persons kept Victoria and Nathan's story alive. Amateur investigators theorized everything from hidden cave systems to human trafficking rings. Some suggested they'd fallen into one of the area's unmapped underground caverns. Others believed they'd been victims of foul play, their bodies hidden in the vast desert wilderness. Victoria's camera became almost mythical in these discussions. Professional photographers knew she never went anywhere without her Canon 5D Mark IV, a $3,000 piece of equipment that would have been her most prized possession. If they could find the camera, many believed, they'd find answers. Nathan would have been 19 now. Victoria would have been 44. Their family held memorial services, but never funerals. Hope, however slim, never completely faded. Jake Morrison had been free climbing in Arches National Park for 15 years. He knew every route, every handhold, every challenging ascent in the area. On March 15th, 2025, he was attempting a new route near Delicate Arch when something caught his eye. 200 feet above the desert floor, perfectly balanced on the narrow peak of the massive stone arch, something was reflecting the morning sunlight. "At first, I thought it was just a piece of metal trash," Jake later told investigators. "Maybe part of an old hiking pole or something a windstorm had blown up there. But as I got closer, I could tell it was deliberate. It was placed there. Getting to the object required technical climbing skills that few people possessed." Jake spent 4 hours carefully navigating the sandstone face, using specialized equipment to reach the arch's summit. What he found made him immediately call park rangers. Victoria's camera sat perfectly centered on the narrow stone peak, as if someone had carefully placed it there as a monument. After 9 years of exposure to Utah's harsh desert conditions, scorching summers, freezing winters, intense UV radiation, flash floods, the camera appeared surprisingly well preserved. But the positioning was impossible. The top of Delicate Arch was accessible only to expert climbers with proper equipment. Victoria, while physically fit, had no climbing experience. Nathan was 10 years old. Neither had carried any technical climbing gear during their camping trip. "There's absolutely no way they could have reached that spot," confirmed park climbing specialist Maria Rodriguez. "Even experienced climbers consider that route challenging. For a photographer with a child to access that location would require equipment they didn't have and skills they didn't possess." Jake carefully retrieved the camera and immediately turned it over to authorities. Despite years of exposure, the Canon 5D Mark IV was still functional. More importantly, its memory card was intact. What they found on that card would reopen the case and raise questions that defied logical explanation. The memory card, which had capacity for thousands of high-resolution images, contained only a single photograph. That photograph showed a landscape none of the investigators recognized. Not Arches National Park, not anywhere in Utah, not anywhere any of them had ever seen. Rolling green hills stretched toward misty mountains under an overcast sky. Ancient-looking stone structures dotted the landscape, covered in vegetation that suggested extreme age. It looked almost European, possibly Celtic, with standing stones arranged in mysterious patterns. But the metadata told an even stranger story. According to the camera's internal clock, The photograph had been taken on September 23, 2016, at 2:47 p.m. Victoria and Nathan had been reported missing on September 22, 2016. They had been officially declared missing persons on September 23, 2016, at 11 a.m. The final photograph in Victoria's camera had been taken 3 days after their disappearance, in a place that didn't exist anywhere near Arches National Park. Digital forensics experts examined the image exhaustively. The metadata appeared authentic, no signs of digital manipulation or tampering. The timestamp came from the camera's internal clock, which investigators confirmed had been accurate during Victoria's previous shoots based on her earlier work. "This is impossible," stated FBI digital evidence specialist Dr. Robert Chen. "Either this camera was somehow transported to an unknown location and used 3 days after the subjects went missing, or we're looking at some kind of anomaly we can't explain." The discovery of Victoria's camera reignited the investigation with unprecedented intensity. The FBI reopened the case as a priority missing persons investigation. New search teams arrived with the most advanced equipment available. The mysterious landscape in the photograph became the focus of a massive identification effort. Geographic experts analyzed every detail of the unknown location. Geologists studied the stone formations. Botanists examined the vegetation. Archaeologists were consulted about the ancient-looking structures. The image was run through every geographic database, compared against satellite imagery of locations worldwide, and shared with international law enforcement agencies. No match was found. "We've compared this landscape against millions of geographic reference points," explained GIS specialist Dr. Amanda Foster. "The stone formations, vegetation patterns, and topography don't correspond to any known location on Earth." The implications were disturbing. Either Victoria and Nathan had somehow traveled to a place that couldn't be identified, or something had happened that challenged basic assumptions about their disappearance. Meanwhile, investigators retraced every detail of the original case. They re-interviewed every witness, re-examined every piece of evidence, and expanded their search parameters to include areas previously considered impossible to reach. The camera's placement on Delicate Arch raised its own questions. Who had put it there? How had they accessed that location? Why had they chosen such a dramatic and inaccessible spot? Was it meant to be found eventually? Or was it supposed to remain hidden forever? Technical climbing experts were brought in to determine every possible route to the Arch's summit. Security footage from park entrances was reviewed for anyone carrying climbing equipment around the time Victoria and Nathan disappeared. The investigation expanded to include every registered climber who had visited the park in the weeks following the disappearance. 9 years after Victoria and Nathan vanished, and months after Jake Morrison's incredible discovery, the case remains as puzzling as ever. The camera has been returned to Victoria's parents, but the questions it raised continue to haunt investigators. Where was that final photograph taken? How did Victoria's camera end up balanced perfectly on one of the most inaccessible points in Arches National Park? Who placed it there, and why? Most importantly, what happened to Victoria Chen and her 10-year-old son Nathan during those 3 days in September 2016? The official investigation continues. Search teams still occasionally survey remote areas of the park. The mysterious landscape photograph has been shared with law enforcement agencies worldwide, hoping someone, somewhere, might recognize it. Victoria's parents visit Arches National Park every year on the anniversary of the disappearance. They stand at the Delicate Arch viewpoint and look up at the spot where their daughter's camera waited for 9 years, holding its impossible secret. Nathan's father maintains a social media presence dedicated to finding answers. He shares age progression photos showing what Nathan might look like now at 19. He posts regular updates about the investigation, hoping that somewhere, someone knows something that might help. The camera itself sits in an evidence locker, but copies of its final photograph continue to circulate among investigators, amateur detectives, and anyone drawn to unsolved mysteries. That haunting landscape, with its ancient stones and misty hills, represents something that shouldn't exist, yet undeniably does. Jake Morrison still climbs in Arches National Park. Sometimes he looks up at Delicate Arch and wonders what other secrets might be hidden in the desert's most inaccessible places. He's become something of a local legend, the climber who found the impossible camera, but he takes no pleasure in the attention. "I just hope it helps find them," Jake told reporters recently, "or at least helps their family understand what happened. Nobody should have to live with questions like these." As the sun sets over the red rocks of Utah, casting long shadows across the desert landscape, Victoria and Nathan's story continues to echo through the canyons and arches where they vanished. Their disappearance has become part of the park's mythology, a reminder that even in our mapped and monitored world, some mysteries remain beyond our understanding. The camera has given up its secret, but that secret has only deepened the mystery. Somewhere out there, in a landscape that might not exist on any map, the truth about Victoria and Nathan Chen waits to be discovered. Until then, their story serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology, the most thorough investigations, and the most determined searches still leave us with questions that have no answers, and photographs that show us places we cannot find. 3 months after Jake Morrison's discovery, the investigation took an unexpected turn when Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in historical photography at the University of Utah, made a startling observation about the mysterious landscape photograph. "I've spent 20 years studying archaeological sites across Europe and the British Isles," Dr. Vasquez explained to investigators. "The stone formations in Victoria's final photograph aren't just random ancient structures. They follow a specific pattern, a pattern I've seen before." She pulled up satellite images on her computer, comparing them to Victoria's photograph. The arrangement of standing stones, the way they were positioned relative to the landscape features, even the weathering patterns on the rock surfaces. All of it matched archaeological sites she'd documented in Scotland and Ireland. But when investigators contacted authorities in those regions, providing detailed descriptions and enhanced images, the response was always the same. No such location existed in their databases. "We've checked every stone circle, every ancient monument, every archaeological site in Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and England," reported Dr. James MacLeod from the University of Edinburgh. "The formations in your photograph would be significant enough to be well documented if they existed here, yet we have no record of them. This revelation only deepened the mystery. How could Victoria's camera capture a landscape that appeared to be European, but existed nowhere in Europe? How could ancient stone formations that looked authentically Celtic be found in a place that didn't appear on any map?" The FBI expanded their investigation internationally, working with Interpol to share the photograph with law enforcement agencies across the globe. Archaeological societies, geographic institutes, and tourism boards in dozens of countries examined the image. The response was unanimous. The landscape was hauntingly familiar, yet completely unidentifiable. As news of Victoria's impossible photograph spread through online communities dedicated to unexplained disappearances, theories began multiplying at an alarming rate. Forums buzzed with speculation ranging from the scientifically possible to the utterly fantastical. Some proposed that Victoria and Nathan had discovered a previously unknown archaeological site in the American Southwest, perhaps ancient ruins that predated known Native American settlements. Experts quickly dismissed this theory. The vegetation in the photograph was clearly temperate climate flora, incompatible with Utah's desert environment. Others suggested government cover-ups, secret military installations, or witness protection programs gone wrong. These theories gained little traction when investigators confirmed that Victoria had no connections to sensitive government work or criminal activities that would require such extreme measures. The most persistent theory involved parallel dimensions or time travel, concepts that serious investigators refused to consider, but that captured the imagination of online communities. Proponents pointed to the timestamp discrepancy as evidence that Victoria and Nathan had somehow slipped through a crack in reality.
"Look at the facts," posted user Desert Mystery 47 on a popular missing persons forum.
Professional photographer with no climbing experience somehow gets her camera to the top of a 200-foot arch. The camera survives 9 years of harsh weather. It contains one photo taken after they disappeared, showing a place that doesn't exist. If that's not evidence of something beyond normal explanation, what is? Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychologist specializing in missing persons cases, offered a more measured perspective. When faced with truly inexplicable circumstances, the human mind naturally gravitates toward extraordinary explanations. While these theories provide emotional comfort for those seeking answers, we must remain focused on evidence-based investigation. But even Dr. Williams admitted that Victoria's case challenged conventional approaches to missing persons investigations. "I've consulted on hundreds of disappearance cases," she said. "I've never encountered evidence that so completely defies logical explanation." Victoria's parents, David and May Chen, had spent 9 years learning to live with uncertainty. Now, Jake Morrison's discovery had reopened wounds that had begun to scar over. "For years we told ourselves they were at peace somewhere," May explained through tears during a press conference. "We held memorial services. We tried to find closure. Now this camera. It means they were alive for at least 3 more days. It means they went somewhere. But where? And why can't anyone find this place?" The psychological impact on the family was devastating. Victoria's ex-husband, Nathan's father, Michael Rodriguez, had gradually accepted his son's death and built a new life. The camera's discovery shattered his carefully constructed equilibrium. "I dream about that photograph every night," Michael revealed during a television interview 6 months after the discovery. "I study every detail, hoping to recognize something, anything that might tell me where my son was during those final days. The not knowing is worse than grief. At least grief has stages. This is just endless questions." The family hired private investigators, psychics, and even amateur treasure hunters who claimed they could locate the mysterious landscape. Each lead ended in disappointment. Each false hope deepened their anguish. David Chen, Victoria's father, became obsessed with the photograph's technical details. Despite having no background in digital photography, he taught himself about metadata analysis, GPS coordinates, and camera settings. He spent hours examining blown-up sections of the image, convinced that some tiny detail would unlock the mystery. "My daughter was a professional," he insisted. "She documented everything meticulously. There has to be some clue we're missing, some detail that will tell us what happened to her and Nathan." The FBI case team, now led by Special Agent Rebecca Torres, implemented the most comprehensive missing persons investigation in the agency's history. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, they analyzed the mysterious photograph against millions of landscape images from around the world. "We're not just looking for exact matches anymore. Agent Torres explained. "We're looking for geographical features, stone compositions, vegetation patterns, even atmospheric conditions that might give us clues about the general region where this photograph was taken." The analysis revealed disturbing inconsistencies. The vegetation suggested a temperate maritime climate, typical of the British Isles or coastal Northern California, but the stone formations indicated geological processes inconsistent with those regions. The atmospheric conditions visible in the photograph suggested high humidity and frequent precipitation, environments where such ancient stone structures wouldn't survive in the pristine condition shown in Victoria's image. Geologists brought in to analyze the photograph identified the stone type as a form of limestone common in certain areas of Scotland and Ireland. But when researchers contacted quarries and geological surveys in those regions, they found no formations matching the structures in Victoria's photograph. It's as if someone took elements from multiple real locations and combined them into a landscape that shouldn't exist, concluded Dr. Sarah Mackenzie, the lead geological consultant. The individual components are authentic and identifiable, but their combination is impossible. The investigation expanded to include every person who had visited Arches National Park during the months following Victoria and Nathan's disappearance. Investigators tracked down hundreds of visitors, interviewing them about anything unusual they might have witnessed. They examined thousands of photographs taken by other visitors, hoping to find some trace of how Victoria's camera reached its impossible perch. One lead seemed promising initially. A rock climbing instructor named Tommy Walsh recalled seeing unusual activity near Delicate Arch in October 2016, about 3 weeks after Victoria and Nathan disappeared. There was this guy, really skilled climber, working on routes I'd never seen anyone attempt before, Tommy told investigators. He had professional-grade equipment, ropes, the works, but he was climbing alone, which is against park regulations. When I tried to approach him, he packed up quickly and left. Tommy's description was too vague to identify the mysterious climber, but security footage from park entrances during that period showed several vehicles carrying climbing equipment. Investigators tracked down dozens of climbers, but none admitted to placing anything on Delicate Arch. 6 months after the camera's discovery, the case attracted international attention when the photograph was featured in a BBC documentary about unexplained disappearances. The program generated hundreds of tips from viewers around the world who claimed to recognize the mysterious landscape. A farmer in County Cork, Ireland, swore the stone formations matched structures on his property. When investigators visited the location, they found similar but distinctly different formations. The stones were smaller, arranged differently, and showed wear patterns inconsistent with Victoria's photograph. An archaeologist in Scotland identified what she believed were the exact standing stones visible in the image. Her discovery generated enormous excitement until detailed comparison revealed that while the stones were similar in age and composition, their positioning relative to surrounding landscape features didn't match. Perhaps most intriguingly, a retired geology professor in Wales claimed the background mountains in Victoria's photograph matched formations in Snowdonia National Park. When investigators visited the suggested location, they found the mountainous backdrop nearly identical to Victoria's image. But the foreground was completely wrong. No ancient stone formations, no rolling hills, entirely different vegetation. It's like someone created a composite image using real elements from different locations, observed FBI digital forensics expert Dr. Robert Chen. But our analysis shows no signs of digital manipulation. This photograph was taken by Victoria's camera at a real location. a location that somehow incorporates geographical features from multiple places that are hundreds of miles apart. The timestamp discrepancy remained the most troubling aspect of the case. Multiple experts confirmed that Victoria's camera had been accurately calibrated before the trip. Her previous photographs from the same camping trip showed correct timestamps that aligned with known events. Dr. Amanda Foster, the GIS specialist consulting on the case, made a disturbing observation when she analyzed the light conditions in Victoria's final photograph. Based on the angle of shadows, the quality of light, and the atmospheric conditions visible in the image, this photograph was taken during what we call golden hour, the period shortly after sunrise or before sunset, she explained. According to the metadata, the image was captured at 2:47 p.m., but the lighting conditions are completely inconsistent with midday photography. This revelation suggested that either the camera's clock was wrong, contradicting all other evidence, or the photograph was taken in a location with dramatically different daylight patterns than Utah in September. Astronomical experts were consulted to determine whether any location on Earth would experience golden hour lighting at 2:47 p.m. in late September. Their analysis ruled out most of the planet, leaving only extreme northern or southern latitudes where such lighting conditions might occur. But the vegetation in Victoria's photograph was incompatible with Arctic or Antarctic environments. "We're looking at a convergence of impossibilities," concluded Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the consulting astronomer. "The lighting suggests polar regions. The vegetation suggests temperate maritime climate. The geology suggests multiple different continental formations. The timestamp suggests the photograph was taken after the subjects disappeared. None of these elements should coexist." 8 months after Jake Morrison's discovery, the investigation team decided to attempt something unprecedented. They would try to recreate the exact conditions under which Victoria's final photograph was taken. Using advanced photogrammetry and 3D modeling, digital artists created detailed reconstructions of the landscape shown in Victoria's image. They analyzed every shadow, every texture, every atmospheric detail to determine the precise time of day, weather conditions, and camera settings used. The reconstruction confirmed Dr. Foster's analysis about the lighting conditions. More troublingly, it revealed that the photograph had been taken from an elevated position, approximately 15 feet above the ground level shown in the foreground. Victoria would have needed to be standing on something, a hill, a structure, or some kind of platform, to capture this image from this angle, explained 3D modeling specialist Carlos Rivera. But there's nothing visible in the photograph that would provide that elevation. The team created physical models of the stone formations visible in Victoria's photograph, using 3D printing technology to reproduce them exactly. When they positioned these models according to the perspective shown in the image, they discovered another impossible detail. The ancient stone structures were arranged in a pattern that created an optical illusion when viewed from Victoria's photographing position. From that specific angle, the stones appeared to form symbols or letters that weren't visible from any other perspective. It's as if whoever arranged these stones wanted them to be photographed from exactly where Victoria was standing, observed Dr. Rivera. The probability of accidentally discovering this viewing angle is astronomical. Someone wanted this photograph to be taken. As the second anniversary of Jake Morrison's discovery approached, the FBI launched what they announced would be their final comprehensive search operation. Using ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, and drone technology more advanced than any previously available, they surveyed every square mile of Arches National Park and surrounding areas. The search team included specialists in underground cave systems, convinced that Victoria and Nathan might have fallen into an unmapped cavern. They explored every known cave, crevice, and underground formation within a 50-mile radius of their last known location. Hydrologists examined every seasonal stream, flash flood pattern, and water flow that might have carried evidence away from the original search area. They even drained several seasonal pools and investigated areas that were only accessible during specific weather conditions. The most intensive effort focused on the area directly below Delicate Arch, where Victoria's camera had been discovered. Using specialized equipment, investigators examined every possible route that could have led to the arch's summit. They mapped every handhold, every potential climbing path, every conceivable way someone might have accessed that impossible perch. The conclusion remained unchanged. There was no plausible explanation for how Victoria's camera had reached the top of Delicate Arch. Search teams also investigated the theory that someone else had placed the camera there after Victoria and Nathan disappeared. They tracked down every expert climber who had visited the park in the 9 years between the disappearance and the discovery. They examined climbing permit records, interviewed local guide services, and even investigated illegal climbing activities. No one admitted to placing the camera. No one could explain how it had survived 9 years of exposure while maintaining its perfect balance on the narrow stone peak. As the case approaches its 10th anniversary, Victoria and Nathan Chen's disappearance has evolved from a missing persons investigation into something approaching modern mythology. Their story has inspired documentaries, books, and countless online discussions about the nature of reality itself. The mysterious photograph continues to circulate through archaeological communities, geographic societies, and amateur detective networks. Enhanced versions revealing microscopic details have been analyzed by experts in dozens of fields. Yet the landscape remains unidentified, its location as mysterious as ever. Victoria's parents have established a foundation dedicated to improving search and rescue techniques in national parks. They've funded research into new technologies for tracking missing persons and supported families dealing with similar disappearances. Nathan's father has become an advocate for missing children, working with law enforcement agencies to improve investigation protocols. He carries an age progression photograph of Nathan, now 20 years old, wherever he goes, never abandoning hope that someday, somewhere, someone might recognize his son. Jake Morrison continues to climb in Arches National Park, though he admits the experience has been forever changed by his discovery. He's become reluctantly famous in climbing communities, known as the man who found the impossible camera. He uses his reputation to promote safe climbing practices and support search and rescue operations. The camera itself remains in FBI custody, though copies of its final photograph have been shared with researchers worldwide. That haunting image, showing a landscape that shouldn't exist, taken at a time when the photographer should have been missing, found in a place that should have been unreachable, continues to challenge our understanding of what's possible. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the desert air is still and the ancient stones of Arches National Park cast long shadows across the sand, visitors report feeling a presence they can't explain, a sense that somewhere, in a landscape that exists between the spaces on our maps, Victoria and Nathan Chen are still exploring, still discovering, still taking photographs of wonders that the rest of us may never see. Their story reminds us that even in our connected, documented, thoroughly mapped world, mysteries endure. Some questions remain unanswered, not because we lack the technology or determination to solve them, but because they exist beyond the boundaries of what we understand as possible. The final photograph in Victoria's camera shows us a place that might not exist on any earthly map, but it exists somewhere, captured forever in digital memory, waiting for the day when someone, somewhere, recognizes those ancient stones and misty hills and can finally tell us where Victoria and Nathan Chen spent their last 3 days together. Until then, their mystery continues to echo through the red rock canyons of Utah, a reminder that some stories don't end with answers. They end with wonder and the eternal human desire to explore the impossible.